Hi, my name is Slava Makarov. Today I'll try to tell you what is going on with Sandbox, why it turned out the way it did, what its goals are, why you shouldn't be worried about what you saw in the Sandbox at the beginning, what balance we'd like to reach, and how we'll arrange everything in a way you'll like. Of course, we gathered a lot of negative feedback. But if you knew what alpha testers of World of Tanks told us privately when they saw our very first prototype, which turned into quite a successful project. Well, I haven't learned anything new from this. Yes, no miracle happened. We didn't roll out a perfect balance that everyone liked at once. We couldn't do it. Miracles don't happen.
Naturally, the launch of Sandbox didn't go exactly how we planned. We had some technical issues, but we dealt with them, and in general, Sandbox launched successfully.
This is the main idea. We really didn't want to release rubbish. That's why we showed the players the current situation at this very early stage. Usually, we don't even show the game to our super testers at this stage. So it's kind of an experiment with open development for us.
It's clear that the balance there wasn't ideal. The first iteration can be considered a pre-alpha version, or even an alpha build. So it's one of the very first versions. Some tanks are too strong. Some others suffer a bit. But this is perfectly normal.
There's a notion of an artillery bracket. First you overshoot a shell, then you undershoot it, and then you understand what distance your target is at and fire there. So what we have now done to Sandbox is an intentional overshoot.
The second version is much, much better. We fixed vehicle stun and improved the tanks that suffered the most. So the first impressions were mostly positive, despite some very clear mistakes. Why do I say clear mistakes? Because it's one thing when you know what doesn't work right and you need to fix it for another version. And it's another thing when you don't know what doesn't work. So everything is okay in our case. We know what doesn't work right. We're fixing it and moving on.
Players were resistant to the new artillery mechanics. Obviously, we changed the artillery too much, as well as other vehicle roles. Its stun is excessive, and it causes very little damage. We can already say that both stun and damage reduction work. But we need to find that balance where artillery has enough damage, doesn't insta-kill targets, and doesn't stun them too much. This is fine-tuning.
One important thing, splash damage was significantly increased for artillery. Due to this, it might not cause too much damage, but it covers a greater area. This depends on player skill, whether they will cover, for example, 2 or 3 vehicles, and each get a 300 hit point hit for 900 or maybe 700 damage in total. Or they will try to fire at single targets. This adds a tactical component.
Look, we've slowed down the game significantly. Again, we did it deliberately. The game needed to be slowed down. The question is how much. Now, we've slowed it down to the point where playing is not convenient anymore. So we will roll it back up to the point when the game is slowed down, but the vehicles are still convenient to play.
This first version of Sandbox showed us that, even though we didn't want to do it, we also had to make changes to the maps in the first iteration. That's why we will add the slightly altered current maps that are more suitable to what happens in Sandbox.
Yes, there are maps that encourage super fast defeats, rushes, and unequal distribution of vehicles in a team.
Now we have plans to make small changes to 3 maps, and after we see how the audience takes to it, we will work on other maps.
And yes, we do it separately and independently from the current rebalance. We plan to add these maps to Sandbox, receive the player's feedback, and then add them to the main server.
So, about the roles, and why they were made this way. The thing is, they are unclear to players at first, but not to us. So when players see the AMX-50B, IS-7, and Maus, they see three heavy tanks that differ drastically from each other. They're completely different. So that's why we introduced a role system, vehicle classification, so that players understand what exactly they're researching.
In fact, this is one of the main balance things we have realized. When a vehicle can successfully play two roles, it turns into an overpowered vehicle. So multi-role vehicles have to be nerfed significantly regarding their general characteristics.
Perhaps some vehicles that can perform two roles, not to 100%, will appear. For example, it might be 50% an assault vehicle and 50% a cruiser vehicle. It's quite possible, and we can do it.
Medium tanks that can play the scout role walk the fine line between two classes. And another problematic type of vehicles are the low and well-armored tank destroyers. We should be very careful with these two types. Maybe some other vehicle types will reveal certain problems too.
For example, the E-50M is a vehicle with a borderline role. It's armored quite well. It has a strong upper Glacis plate that almost nothing can penetrate. It also has quite weak turret armor. But it's not easy to penetrate due to its gun mantling, angled armor, and reduced accuracy. And the tank has a good gun. But it doesn't fire well from long distance now because we nerfed APCR shells. The APCR shells have the highest drop in penetration depending on the distance. It's also mobile enough. Not that it rolls like a super light tank, but it's quite good. And it's well armored. So we get a borderline vehicle that can absorb and cause damage, but it's not the best in both characteristics among other vehicles of its type. So it's a hybrid vehicle with certain borderline characteristics. It has a mixed role. We call it a hybrid.
Some tanks were just bad. Besides several tanks with two roles, we got several tanks with no roles at all. And again, this is a normal result of the process. We didn't fully understand what characteristics would influence what. It's impossible to make ideal roles for all tanks in these conditions. Since we made a mistake, we will rework these vehicles, adjust them to suit a certain role, and analyze and discuss these roles once again.
Of course, we also understand that there are a lot of rumors about Sandbox. And most people now take to Sandbox quite aggressively, because many vehicles they are used to behave differently now.
There's no pinpoint solutions to our problems because they are complex. We need to remake a lot of things, tune something here, adjust something there, and one thing entails another. So we need to rework everything at once.
Players continue to send us their feedback, like, "Hey guys, look, you made nice features for the artillery. Why don't you release it now? They're so cool, they help us solve some artillery problems." Or, "I like how the Foch 155 looks now. Let's release it separately."
The current balance in its current state will never be released under any circumstances.
You need to understand that the current features and characteristics of certain vehicles couldn't be transferred to the main server, because they now exist in a totally different ecosystem, in the Sandbox ecosystem. And we don't know yet, for example, how the new artillery features will work without the Sandbox balance in general, how they will work on the main servers.
If we add the current artillery from the Sandbox to the old balance, it wouldn't be great. because now players will just hide in the bushes. The artillery that annoyed them before will stun them now. So the players will continue hiding, thinking they can't move, like, well, I'm stunned, right? That's how it could be.
Well, the best thing you can do in Sandbox is play. Tell us about your impressions, and then play more.
We read your feedback and analyze it. It's also gathered from the regional forums. Everything reaches the developers and is read. And the developers also play the game.
That's why when we're asked what we want to achieve, we have a very clear answer. We want to make players happy with the vehicle balance.
This is one of our tasks, to increase the number of playable tanks and reduce the number of unplayable ones. What we want is for every vehicle to have a right and wrong way to play it. And if you play it right, you're doing a good job. This is one of our main tasks.
Sandbox has been running for some time now. During this time, we've gathered a lot of statistics from the server and analyzed the feedback thoroughly. We want you to continue telling us about what you like or don't like in Sandbox, what vehicles are tuned well, and what requires more work. Based on statistics, your feedback, and your opinions, we aim to make the best version of the balance.